Hi, and welcome to Dwelling Place. We hope you are encouraged and inspired as you listen to this message. Enjoy.
Jesus uses these Beatitudes, these blessings, as the introductory. It's like he's opening up his whole message with these sharp statements, with these blessed statements. And so this word blessed, what it means is the happy life. It means the good life. And so when we begin to interchange some of these words, all of a sudden, we begin to see a little bit more. It's like the door opens just a little bit further as to what Jesus may be saying. It's a divinely favored life, a happy life, a joyful life, and a flourishing life. And he says this: God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him. That's the happy life. Thank you, Jesus. God blesses those who mourn, for they'll be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they'll inherit the whole earth. That's the happy life. That's the divinely favored life. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they'll be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they'll be shown mercy. This good life, this divinely favored life, are for the merciful, for they'll be shown mercy. And so that's where we find ourselves this morning in this journey through the Beatitudes. I remember growing up playing a game called Mercy. Does anybody remember Mercy? And so basically, it didn't take a lot of intellect for this game. Basically, you would interlock your fingers with your opponent, and as soon as somebody started, that meant it's on. And you had to inflict such pain upon your opponent by twisting their hand or maneuvering their fingers or whatever it was, that you would get them to call out, mercy. Mercy. So number one, you either had to try and find somebody who was weak. So I play this game with my kids all the time. The challenge is, if you find somebody who's a competitor and maybe of equal strength, you don't want to begin to play this game to the point of where they call mercy and you continue to hurt. Because let me tell you, if you lose, mercy is only shown to the merciful. And if you haven't given up in game one and you keep turning and twisting and inflicting pain, I'm telling you, when their turn comes around, and maybe your strength is starting to diminish, when you call mercy, no mercy will be shown. I remember as a kid, my uncles would torment me like you wouldn't believe, and I don't know what it is about adults that just like tormenting children. And so what they would do, and then in turn what I've done with my kids, is, you know, when you can just wrestle them. And you can wrestle them to the point where you can make sure their arms are pinned down and their legs are pinned down. And then you just pretend to tickle them, right? It's so funny. And then you tickle them a little bit. And it's like, there's laughter. It's joyful. But then you just go a little bit more. And I'm telling you, it doesn't take long before the laughter turns to the stop, 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 and then all of a sudden there's tears. Then all of a sudden it turns into anger and then rage, and they can't do anything because you just got them pinned down. I'm just like, just call out mercy. Just call out mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they'll be shown mercy. Jesus is speaking these blessings to a group of people that have been following him. They've been seeing what he's talking about. They've been watching how he's been behaving. And it was made up of people that were broken. It was made up of people that were sick. It was made up of people who weren't the well-to-do in society. They were inquisitive, they were poor, they were insignificant, and they were unimportant. These people were the hurting, they were the outcasts, and they were oppressed. And to these people, Jesus says, blessed are the merciful, for they'll receive mercy. If anybody could understand the concept of mercy, it would be these people. But to be saying to them, blessed are the merciful, there's some things that you may need to put into action in your life if you want to see the fullness of the mercy shown upon you. The happy life, the good life, is for those who will be merciful. You know, one thing that I've noticed about mercy is this: you can't have mercy without it being associated with pain or affliction. And so as we continue to work our way through these Beatitudes, it's interesting that so many times Jesus is really laying before us the realities of our life and saying, you really can't escape the challenges and the difficulties, the persecution, the frustration, the hurt, the pain. But there is a way where this life can be blessed. There is an avenue for you to be able to have the good life. Pain and affliction have to be associated with mercy. Charles Spurgeon says this: the Lord's mercy often rides to the door of our heart upon the black horse of affliction. You who have been hurt, you who have been betrayed, you who have been neglected, this is for you. To you, the Lord says, if you are merciful, mercy will be shown to you, and this is the happy life. So, what is mercy? And I just want to take some time to really build this out for us this morning. The basic Hebrew word connects this idea of mercy and compassion very closely, and these two words are associated with the womb, which is really odd and bizarre. But in essence, what's going on is mercy and compassion are so deeply connected within us that its meaning comes from this term womb. And when a mother is carrying a child, there is a deep connection. There is a connection that just goes beyond an action. There is a connection that goes beyond a subtle emotion. This is deeply connected to who we are as human beings. It's a deeply emotive response, and it's connected to action, primarily with forgiving and deliverance. This word, mercy and compassion, throughout the Bible, when it's referenced, 80% of the time that it's used, it's directly relating to how God engages with us. It's only 20% of the time where it's about humans with other humans. The vast majority of the times that the Bible speaks about this idea of mercy and compassion, it's God's relationship with us. And the first time it's used the first word in the Bible that's used to describe God's character is this word, merciful, compassionate. It's in Exodus 34, 5-8. It says this: then the Lord came down in a cloud and stood there with him, and he called out his name, Yahweh. The Lord passed in front of Moses, calling out, Yahweh the Lord, the God of compassion and mercy. I am slow to anger and filled with unfailing love and faithfulness. I lavish unfailing love to thousands of generations. I forgive iniquity, rebellion, and sin, but I do not excuse the guilty. Mercy can be described like this: compassionate leniency towards enemies or wrongdoers. It's a deeply emotive response to commonly used to describe God's response when people cry out to him. All through the Bible, you just see this repetitive cycle of where God is there with his people reject him and walk away from him. He allows them to bear the consequences of their journey and the direction and the choices they want to make. Then when they're in dire straits, they turn around, they call out to God like a child to a parent, help me, help me. And God can't help himself but be compassionate and show mercy. Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 27 and 28 says this: therefore you delivered them into the hand of their oppressors and oppressed them. But when they cried to you in the time of their distress, you heard from heaven, and according to your great compassion, This is how he works. He hears them, and then he works according to his compassion, his mercy. Jeremiah 31 verse 20 says, "Is not Israel still my son, my darling child, says the Lord? I often have to punish him, but I still love him. And that's why I long for him and will surely have mercy on him." It's a character trait, and the first character trait noted of God. God let people experience the consequences of their actions, but he was always inclined to be merciful towards them. Jonah probably says it best in his frustration towards the people of Nineveh, because Jonah just wanted to see them annihilated. You know, sometimes you feel like people are so opposed to you or so opposed to your ideology or the way that you want to live, where it's just like, God, I've had enough of these people. And so if I can just take control of the wheel for a moment, can we just annihilate them? Can we just get rid of them, because they're really frustrating me and irritating me and I can't see a way back for them. That's basically Jonah's position towards the Ninevites. And then in Jonah 4 verse 2 it says this, "I knew that you're a merciful and compassionate God, slow to anger and filled with unfailing love. You're eager to turn back from destroying people." It's interesting where sometimes we are so set in our self-righteousness that we're willing to call for the destruction and annihilation of others. But God, in all his goodness, in all his mercy, sees for a better way. Like Jonah, we become suspicious of this idea of mercy. We pit mercy against justice. We see mercy as the wolf in sheep's clothing. We see mercy as not holding somebody accountable or responsible for actions that they've taken. But mercy is not opposed to justice. Properly understood, mercy actually promotes justice. Thomas Aquinas states that mercy without justice is the mother of disillusion, and justice without mercy is cruelty. Mercy has this way of tempering justice and cannot run counter to justice. And in turn, justice requires mercy. Doug, what about the people whose behavior has been harmful towards me? What about people that have hurt me to such a significant level? How do we wrestle with that? How do we outwork that? Because I've only ever known mercy as releasing somebody of the actions within their life, and then I feel like they're getting off scot-free. Mercy does not mean that there are no consequences. Mercy does not mean that we must trust those who have betrayed us. Mercy does mean that even through the pain and the suffering, we can see the tragedy of the human heart and how it engages with those around us. When the balance between mercy and justice is lost, the wicked are either allowed to go unpunished, or the punished are harmed with brutality. Both things lead to social chaos and community confusion. So, who are the people that can receive this mercy, this compassionate love that the Lord has for his people? There's three categories that I'm just going to go through of people that receive the mercy of God. These are the three. The unaware. We have these three categories. The unaware, the undeserving, and the unexpected. The unaware, there's a story in 1 Kings chapter 3 where these two mothers have come to Solomon. And Solomon was a wise king. And what they had done is one mother, during the night, they were in the same house. It was only them there. They both had children. They were both born about 3 days apart. One of the children dies because the mother had rolled on the child in their sleep. And as the child had died, she then replaced the baby. And so they woke up. The mother who had her child stolen was like, this isn't right. And so they go to the king with the child that's alive. And they go, "King, we need you to sort this out because she's stolen this child from me." And so what Solomon ends up doing is he ends up he ends up creating this very uncomfortable situation where he asks for a sword. Because what we're going to do, just to sort this out right now, is we've got both the mothers here and we've got one child. And who knows, in a world of equality, we're just going to cut the child in half. And half can go to that mother and half can go to that mother. And the mother of the child said to the king, don't do it. Don't do it. Let the other mother take my child. And the other mother was there going, let's do it. Let's cut the kid in half. And so Solomon, in his wisdom and how he had presented it, said, okay, now I understand who the real mother is of this child. It's the one that has mercy upon him. And it's interesting that one mother goes to the king looking for justice. And as she's going looking for justice, she actually finds herself in a position where she's having to deliver mercy. And it's through her mercy where justice comes. The truthful mum, looking for justice, delivered mercy, and in her mercy towards her child, justice is delivered to her. It's a story of two responses of mercy. One mum is broken and leans towards life. The other mum is hardened and desires death. Mercy leads to life. The unaware, that child was completely unaware that it needed the mercy of its parent. That mother was completely unaware that she was going to have to be merciful towards her child so that she could live, and in that merciful state actually release the child to another caregiver. The undeserving receive mercy. There's the story of the lost son, and there's this parable that Jesus tells, and he's got these kids and a lot of property and everything else is going on, and one son seems that he just wants to go and do his own thing. And so he goes to do his own thing. He goes, hey, Dad, how about we just split the inheritance now? You just give it to me. I know you're still alive, but I'm going to treat you like you're dead. Give me my part of the inheritance. I'll go off and do what I need to do, and then it'll all be joyful. And he goes off and has a tragic life. And when he comes back, he gets to the point where he knows very well that he doesn't deserve to be back in his father's household, but he's willing to come back and to be a servant. He's willing to come back and to be the lowest of the low in the hierarchy of that environment. And the father welcomes him back, he embraces him. The older son gets hurt. The older son gets angry because why should this person, my brother, why should he deserve mercy? The younger brother knew very well that he didn't deserve it, but he was a recipient of it. Brian Stevenson, he's a director of Equal Justice Initiative in Alabama, helping inmates and prisoners be reconciled back into community and helping the system be merciful towards inmates. And he says this type of thing. He says, mercy is most empowering, liberating, and transformative when it is directed to the undeserving. Mercy is received by the unaware, the undeserving, and the unexpected. John chapter 8, we have the story of the woman that's caught in adultery. And so we have the Pharisees and the teachers of the law bring this woman to Jesus. He's teaching away, and what they want to do is they just want to catch him out. As so many times through the stories of the New Testament, we get the Pharisees or the religious leaders wanting to catch Jesus out because he was challenging their mindset. He was forcing them to think deeper and to go beyond just the law-abiding action. And they didn't really see how this worked with the law book that they were following. And so what happens is they bring this person to Jesus, this lady who's caught in adultery. And they say to him, hey, so the law of Moses says that we need to be able to stone her to death. They're like, what do you say? And Jesus begins to just take a bit of a different route. He unpacks it a little bit differently and begins to question them. And he begins to, the Bible says that he began to write in the sand or in the dirt. And this woman is released. This woman's set free because as Jesus questioned their life, they become aware that they weren't good. And it says this in verse 4 through to 8, it says, "Teacher," they said to Jesus, "this woman is caught in an act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say?" They were trying to trap him, saying something that they could use against him, but Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. They kept demanding an answer, so he stood up and he said, "All right, but let the one who has sinned throw the first stone." Then he stooped down again and started writing in the dust. In verse 10 and 11, this is what Jesus says to the lady. "Where are your accusers?" They wandered off. They dropped the stones and they began to wander off. "Where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you?" "No, Lord," she said. And then Jesus says to her, "Neither do I. Now go and sin no more." There's something very powerful about unexpected mercy. By the law, that woman was going to get stoned. And Jesus continues to take this law and continues to find a deeper truth in it. And so this morning, as I come to a bit of a close, I really want to remind us, I guess, in our relationship with God. There are many of us who have come into relationship with him. There are many of us that might be in this room that don't even know him, but we are unaware of the mercy of God. We are unaware that we need the mercy of God. We don't deserve it. There's people in this place and it's like, it's undeserved. And it's actually a great position to be in. I don't deserve the mercy of God. But because of who he is, because of his mercy and his compassion and his love, he's the one that took the steps to be able to reconcile us to him. There's this great story, I'm sure a lot of you will probably know it. I used to call it Les Miserables. And it's a book written in the 1800s by Victor Hugo, and it's this unbelievable story about this trait of mercy. And this person, do you want me to do a French accent? Jean Valjean. You like that? I'm not even sure if that's how you pronounce it, but I was just having a go. Jean is a criminal. He's been put in prison for 5 years because he stole some bread. And then in an attempt to escape, he doesn't fully escape and he gets put back in prison for another 19 years. And then he's released into society and in his activity, he only sees himself as a criminal. He only sees himself as somebody who can outwork criminal events. And as he's going through his life, there's this other gentleman, Javert, I think his name was, the police officer, and the guard, and all he wanted to do was catch John. And it was like, I'm going to catch this guy out, I'm going to watch him. He was a legalist, and it was to the letter of the law. And John finds himself in this house with a bishop. And what he does is he escapes one night and he takes this silver candlestick and he takes it with him, and the police officer, Javert, finds him and he brings him back and he's like, "I've got you again. You can't help yourself. You are a criminal." And so he brings him back to the house of the bishop and goes, "Bishop, is this the candlestick that belongs to this house? Because this criminal has decided that it's his." And the bishop says this, "Oh no, that was a gift. I gave it to him so he could take it." And Jean had to reconcile this act of mercy because there was no pre-existing relationship. There was no reason that the bishop could have provided that mercy towards him, but he did. And as he continued to wrestle through acts of criminal activity, as well as trying to understand this idea of mercy upon his life, we see this story play out where we find Javert, the police officer, who's strict by the law. Full justice needs to be given. There's no opportunity for mercy. We find him later in the story where he is now a prisoner or held captive by revolutionaries with a desire to kill him. Now, this man who had poured out so much torture on Jean, he was there in that place bound. And Jean, having received mercy, provided an act of mercy to somebody who had hurt him significantly, and he released him from his bounds, and Javert was set free. Javert couldn't reconcile it. He was a man of the law. There was no room for mercy. Mercy proves to be an unsolvable problem for Javert. Mercy forced a crisis in the lives of both Javert and Jean. And it becomes a story again of two responses to mercy. One man is broken and lives. The other man is hardened and dies. Sorry to ruin the story for you, but it was written in 1862, and if you haven't read it by yet, he couldn't cope. He couldn't cope with the mercy that was shown to him. Javert, like Jonah, like the lying mother, like the oldest son, and like the Pharisees, have this idealistic view of what life should be for them and what life looks like for everyone else. In their rightness, or in their perceived rightness, they see the wrongs of others and only can come to one conclusion: everybody else deserves brutal judgment. God blesses those who are merciful, for they'll be shown mercy. Lamentations 3:22-23 says this: "The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh every morning." In Ephesians 2, it talks about God's love being so great, how rich he is in mercy, compassion, love. Mercy is required of us. Mercy can be received for us. And in a sense, mercy ruins us, and at the same time, it rescues us.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope you were encouraged as you listened to today's message. Have a wonderful week, and we hope to see you again on Sunday. See you later, church.